All right, cool. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. As we get ready to get started, just wanted to say hello. I am coming to you from Los Angeles, California. It's about 10, what time is it? 10:30 in the morning over here. So a little bit different. I know so many of you on the call. I see Mr. Tahoka, how you doing? Long time no see. It's been forever. Great, 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 great. Okay, cool. So as you can see, I've got my screen shared, so I'm happy to start the presentation whenever we feel good. Just give me the green light. Sebastian, yeah. Woo, all right, here we go. Let's do this. Okay, everyone, so thank you so much for taking the time to take part in this workshop and also to be a part of this summit. I think that, you know, you guys have done a great job of organizing such an important gathering of young people from South Florida who care about climate and want to do something about it. So my name is Danni Washington, and I'm originally from Miami. I was born at Jackson Memorial Hospital back in 1986 and grew up and went to high school in Broward County. So I didn't go to any of Miami-Dade schools, but I did have a lot of friends down there and did lots of work. I went to the University of Miami to study marine science and biology. And from there, I went on a very interesting journey, a journey that I wasn't expecting. And I'm gonna get into that right now. Oops. Hold on a second, guys. Tech difficulties. I'm trying to press my screen here and it's not letting me. So let's see. That's kind of weird. All right, I need some tech help here. I'm trying to move to the next slide and it's giving me no go.
Press the S key on your laptop
S?
or computer. Yeah, ESC. That doesn't work?
It's not working, no.
Do you have the Windows button on your computer?
Let's see. Now I'm working off of a Mac. Sorry, everyone. This is weird, really weird. We just tested it worked fine and now it wants to give us problems.
Try stopping the share and then resharing because like maybe it's just glitching.
Oh, okay. Well, we did
switched.
flip a slide.
All right. Did you move it?
No.
No.
Okay. All right, there we go. We got controls back. It's back and live. Awesome. All right, guys. So like I mentioned, I grew up in South Florida. When I was younger, my mom worked in actually the cruising industry, interestingly enough. She worked in the corporate side of things. So as a child, we ended up going on a lot of trips on cruises. And that was really where I began feeling super curious about the ocean and what was out beyond the horizon whenever we went to the beach. And that love and passion grew throughout my entire childhood through exploration and going on field trips and ultimately going to South Broward High up in Hollywood, where I joined a marine science magnet program there and had an experience of a lifetime. We did several things during high school, different excursions. Ultimately, we went to South Africa when I was 17 and got to help with some research with Dr. Neil Hammerslag, and it was fantastic, which led me to the University of Miami and began my marine science journey. And so studying at UM was awesome. Again, lots of experiences, lots of internships and volunteering, which is one of the places where I've met a lot of the teachers that are a part of this group today. And I just had a great time. It was very difficult to study marine science at UM, okay? It's not an easy program at all. It's a double major program, but it was worth it because I ultimately learned the basics, the foundational knowledge that I needed to move into a career of science communication. So just after graduating from University of Miami, I also started a nonprofit called BigBlueCrew. And this nonprofit was aimed to address the disconnect or the lack of engagement with young people, specifically young people of color in the South Florida community when it came to ocean conservation. So BigBlueCrew was started in 2008. I co-founded with my mom, and we worked on this project in order to create fun ways to talk about the ocean, to connect people to the ocean, so that everyone feels that they have a stake in the health of our ocean as well. We host several different events. We have a festival called Art by the Sea, which we've been hosting for the last 7 years or so. And we go out to Virginia Key, historic Virginia Key, and have this amazing day celebrating the ocean through art and science. And now we're pivoting into virtual programming, which we're so excited about. So definitely check out our website when you have time. Here are a few pictures from Art by the Sea over the years, where we invited several scientists from the University of Miami, Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science, as well as Ocean Kids, where they brought out different hands-on science activities for our young audience to enjoy. We also invited lots of local artists, including Mimi Foray, which some of you may know. She's an elementary art teacher on Key Biscayne, but lots of different talented artists communicating complex topics about ocean conservation, everything from shark finning to ocean acidification to coral bleaching, all of these difficult things that a lot of people have just zero interest in learning about. We can use art to convey those messages, because art is the tip of the spear. Any social change that you're a part of, art will always be at the forefront, because I've always believed that artists are some of the most bold people on the planet. They're willing to say things in ways that anyone can understand it. Art is a universal language. One of the other programs that we worked on in the past is called Sea Youth Rise Up. And this was a program co-founded by the Youth Ocean Conservation Summit, founded by Sean Russell, who's in that picture, as well as the Ocean Project. And we came together in 2016 to provide a platform to bring small groups of youth leaders from all over the country and the world to go to Washington, D.C. every World Oceans Day and take part in talking about ocean policy with our policy makers. So we would send these students and college, both high school and college students, to Capitol Hill, and we'd have meetings with different policymakers, including Congress people, as well as senators and their staffers, to talk about the importance of specific ocean policy that apply to their communities and around the nation. It was a great experience. And one of these these experiences for me personally, it was a huge turning point, because I saw the importance of knowing that as a citizen of this country, we can walk into the doors of the Capitol and speak to our policymakers about what we care about. Of course, things are different now because of the events that happened within the last year. But I think that as we move forward as a country, as a nation, we've got to figure out more ways to engage with the people who are making these policies, because that's the core of how we're going to make change. And so if you're interested, just a shameless plug, if you want to join Big Blue and you and take part in our programming, feel free. We've got a page on our website called BigBlueCrew, and you can join our crew and take part in a lot of volunteer efforts that we're continuing to participate in. So now I want to segue to this idea that, like I mentioned, when I graduated from the University of Miami, I kind of went on this new track that I wasn't expecting. The nonprofit was one of those arms, but the other element of that journey was discovering that I wanted to become a science communicator. Now, back in 2008, I would say that term and people would be like, what? What do you do? I don't get it. But I quickly figured out how to explain what I envisioned. I remember watching this dude right here on TV when I was a kid, Bill Nye the Science Guy. And I've always loved his enthusiasm, his passion, his clarity in the way that he communicated these different concepts that I was learning in school. And so I thought back to that and I was like, well, I wonder if someone like me could do something like him, right? Not a carbon copy, because I am myself, I'm who I am, but I wanted to do something similar and in the same vein. And so that's where that journey began. And it started with working with a team called Untamed Science. And this was my first gig out of college. We worked together for 3 years, 6 science filmmakers all together. And we made 200 science videos for textbooks, K through 12 textbooks with Pearson Publishing. And this is where I knew, I was like, yes, this is exactly where I want to be, because I just enjoyed learning every single day, learning how to film, learning how to work behind the camera, learning how to edit, all of these things. These are all skills that I did not have prior to working with them. But through this experience, I was able to see, wow, storytelling is where it's at. Which then ultimately led a few years later to hosting my very first nationally syndicated show called Nature Knows Best on Fox Network. And this show I love the most because the topic was all about biomimicry and how we're using nature to inspire new designs and new technologies to help solve a lot of our biggest challenges in the world. We did 2 seasons of this, 26 episodes, and if you want to watch, it's on Amazon Prime, so you can pull it up. The episodes are super short, they're like 22 minutes long, fun, punchy, and interesting. And then most recently, I worked on a show called Mission Unstoppable as a correspondent last year on season 1, hosted by former Disney star Miranda Cosgrove. And this show is specifically about women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And we traveled around the country interviewing different women and learning about their stories. So I just wanted to share with you just a little bit of my backstory, but the biggest question I want you to take away from my presentation today is to ask yourself, what is your ultimate intention? I go to a lot of events like this related to the climate crisis and activism and how we are going to create strategies to figure out solutions to this massive global issue that we're all grappling with. But it all starts with what you have within yourself. What are you intending to do in the world? What's the role that you're trying to play in this movement? You got to have clarity on that question. And so think about it for a second. What is your ultimate intention? Why are you getting involved with all this? I can tell you what mine is. Mine is that I would like to be able to bring communities together to see the beauty of our future, because there is still a future. No matter how much bad news we hear, no matter how many tough things we have to grapple with in our present time, there is still a future that's available to us if we choose it. And so as a person who is a communicator and storyteller, my intention is always to figure out new ways to tell stories that will bring people together. And I just plugged this in because it's one of my favorite diagrams. It's called Ikigai, and it's a Japanese concept, and it means a reason for being. And I'm sure most of you recognize this type of diagram. It's basically a Venn diagram, and it brings all these different intersections of our own personal lives in one place. And that's why I love it so much. And so when you ask yourself that question, what is my intention? This is a great resource to start with. Looking at what you love, looking at what the world needs. Sometimes what you can be paid for. Many of you are in high school now and looking for what your next steps are in your career. What are you going to study in college? Or maybe you're in college right now and you're looking for that next phase. It's important. We all need tools. We all need money to live and operate in the world we live in. And so how can you combine that with what you love, with what the world needs and what you're good at? So if you want to screenshot that, I'd highly recommend it, and maybe think about it a little bit later. So let's zoom out for a second, all the way out. We're looking at our beautiful planet. I call it planet Ocean. Some people still like to call it planet Earth, but I prefer the first one. But I see us as one. We are all just one human race trying to make it on this planet. And what we know for sure is that nature will go on with or without us. It's up to us really to decide. And your work as a climate activist is incredibly important, because we know where we are, where we stand, our behaviors, our activities, and the things that we've produced in the world are causing harm. And there are some systems that need to be dismantled and changed, because not only are they harming the planet, but they're harming people as well. Those who are at the front lines of the climate crisis are more than likely, people of color, marginalized communities who are feeling the brunt of this. But climate, as we know, and the climate crisis has no boundaries. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter how much money you have, what your background is, it touches every single human on this planet. And so as a climate crisis activist, keeping that in mind and the intersectionality of every person on this planet, we all walk different lines, different roads in life. We all have different identities. So how can you as an activist bring all of that home and make sure that it is inclusive, that it's accessible, and it's possible for anyone to get involved with the movement? Which brings me to CYCOM. So like I mentioned before, a lot of people, when I mentioned my job and the role that I chose for myself as a science communicator, someone who's passionate about science, who's learned about science and continues to learn about science and serves as a bridge between the science community and the general public, CYCOM is really a huge element of what you do as a climate activist. Climate change in itself is misrepresented because people don't understand the science behind it. And so how can we be better science communicators? How can we tell a story about the science that's being done in the field by talented scientists who have published numerous papers showing us, hey, this is what's happening? How can we communicate that to different audiences? That's where storytelling comes in. And when I think of storytelling, I always think of these youth activists that really inspire me on a day-to-day basis and who have done a phenomenal job of being science communicators and storytellers. I'm sure many of you probably recognize a lot of the faces here. We've got, Shea Bastida, Isra Hizri, and Jamie Margolin, also Hannah Testa from Atlanta, Georgia, Shateska Martinez, Wawa Gatheru, and Dyson Chi from Hawaii. All of these youth leaders are massively talented in this art of storytelling, and of course, Greta Thunberg. But what do they all have in common? In my opinion, they all have a brand image, an image that people can relate to, that they see themselves in, and that they're willing to listen and to learn more from them because they relate to this brand image. And no, I want to preface this. I know a lot of people will hear the word brand and be like, this is not a brand. We're not a company. We're not producing some product that we're selling in a store. I get it, totally. But when I say brand, when you have something to offer the world and you're trying to get it out there, it ultimately is a brand, because a brand image is where you create an impression, right? And the product is your work. It's what you're contributing to the world and to this movement. And so by thinking about it just like that, just a little bit of a shift in how you present yourself to the world, how you're sharing the movement, how you're creating these communities of people working together to create change. How are you presenting yourself out there? And how can you use that image to draw more people in so that they can be a part of the movement too? And so when it comes to an image, a brand image, and however you're presenting yourself, these are the biggest things you can do. I call them the 3 C's. Be clear, be concise, and be consistent. These are all 3 elements that the youth leaders I just mentioned all participate in. They are super crystal clear about their messaging, about what they're trying to achieve. They're concise. You call it a news bite, you call it whatever you want to call it. People usually have a very short attention span. So you've got to get your message out quickly. Some people call it an elevator pitch. Like, whatever you're working on, how are you telling that story? Can you do it in 60 seconds or less? It's important that you figure that out. And it's a process, because you internally have to decipher what the biggest points or the takeaways are that you're trying to convey, and then distill it down to its most simplest form. And that takes some time and practice. And then the third thing is consistency. How consistent are you? Whenever you're in a room, whenever you're at a conference, whenever you're networking, whenever you're meeting someone new, are you being consistent in the message that you're telling them? The thing that's most important to you? The part of the climate change and climate crisis, leaders who are creating these new ideas, are you consistent with that? So here's a quick look. I showed you a few youth activists that I admire very much. These are some of my generation, CYCOMers. I'm 34, so, I'm technically a millennial, but these are a few of my friends that I really admire as well, because they've done a great job of building their brand identity as science communicators as well. So we've got people like Samantha Yamin, who's a neurobiologist, Justin Schaefer, who is an amazing host as well, Emily Calandrelli, and Imogen Cancellaire, and Jason Ward. So you're more than welcome to check them out on my website. So here's a quick reference, and I just wanted to throw in a couple of tools, like tangible things that you could actually look at to reference what I'm talking about. This is a great book by Cynthia Johnson called Platform, and it talks about, how to build your personal branding. And again, I want to make sure that you're clear that I am talking about you as an individual right now, creating a story and becoming a science storyteller, but I'm also looking at it from the angle of like a movement, right? Because we have to be unified in this idea of how we're putting forward the information we're sharing. And it can be applied to a club. It could be applied to this summer. It could be applied to whatever you're creating in the world. You can apply these same concepts. And with 3.2 billion people using social media on a daily basis, we have so much opportunity to get the word out and to find creative ways to share the messaging around what humans can do to fix climate change. And this is very important, because this is a huge platform. Your generation is really the most informed generation of all time. You guys have access to information like no one has ever before. And so with social media, it's a tool. Some people look at it as though it's something that's detrimental. Yes, it's just like anything, it's a double-edged sword. It could be either or. But how can you as an activist use these platforms and amplify your message in a positive way. So when it comes to CYCOM, and I say social media is a very big umbrella statement, but like there are different strategies for you to use your science communication skills to talk about climate change, to talk about the movement, but anchoring it in all of these different ways in which you can create an audience for yourself, especially right now as we continue to deal with COVID-19 and that we are not able to get together in person. Use these digital tools. So first off is podcasts. I mean, podcasts have blown up in the last year. I personally love podcasts, and it's really it is an endeavor. It's a production that you have to work on, but it's not impossible. And it could just start with you recording on your computer or recording on your phone. You don't necessarily have to have a fancy mic to do that. But there are some steps here that I outlined, and I won't go too much into, but there are some steps that really, really help amplify your podcast. There's another element. Maybe some of you out there have thought about this idea of being on TV. I mean, that's an interesting place to do science communication and to get your message out. To get started as a TV host in a traditional sense on network television, it's a bit of a, there's no silver bullet way to get there, but some of these tools really help. If you love making videos, if you love talking in front of the camera, like make a reel of yourself, do an adventure reel, like different things that you've done in the field. You can do some test videos, which is where you apply to be a part of a production team. Maybe you can write down some of the networks that you know that you watch on a regular basis that you love to work with and find their contact info and reach out. And then if you have a show idea and you want to produce a show, that's something that takes like a deck and a treatment, which is like a short summary of what that's about, and just send it. You never know. You never know what you'll land. One of my favorite ways to get out on network television is through the Science Channel, and I get to be a part of these different science shows, one being Strange Evidence, which is a mystery show about footage, of strange things happening on the planet, but we're able to talk about the science behind it and prove or disprove, why it happened, how it happened, all of those things. And it's a really fun way to engage people in these conversations about science. And then there's digital series. These are things that you can create on a regular basis, whether it's YouTube or Facebook. This program that I worked on was with a comedian, and it was through Insider. And we went through the scientific method, answering questions that people Google on a regular basis. And we had so much fun because we infused humor. It was lighthearted, but it was still talking about the science. And like I said before, YouTube is a great place to start if you really love to make videos and you want to continue to communicate through digital video. Blogging and vlogging, awesome, same thing, create a website. You can create one for free on Wix.com, create a calendar, an editorial one where you have a schedule of how many things you're going to create. You can use your smartphone to record video. There's editing software out there, and then you can store that footage in places for free like Google Drive. And again, you can apply all of these things that I'm mentioning here to your role as an activist. These are all applicable. There's also science writing, where you can basically put out a bunch of different topics that you want to write about and pitch yourself to different publications. There are lots of online things. Look at the publications that you love to read yourself. Can you contribute an article? Just write it and pitch it. You never know. You never know what you might find. And then of course there's art. And this is close to my heart because I have so many friends who are scientists, like Melissa Cristina Marquez featured here. She's a shark biologist, and she makes science art featuring the dermal denticles of different sharks. And it's beautiful stuff. And it's still able to help her communicate her message as a conservationist. And this is just a quick coloring sheet that we made with Big Blue and You, but we engage with artists all the time to create art that will convey important messages. And then finally, children's books. This is another option. As a young person, you've got your finger on the pulse on what the next generation of kids might like. And maybe it looks like you writing a book about, about the movement, about how you can get involved. You're never too young to write this and write books if you choose to. There's lots of self-publishing platforms and pathways, and for you to just create something. You could even create an ebook, a digital book that you can distribute that explains the things that you want to talk about. All right, last one, broadcast news. This is cool. This is what Bill Nye has done over the years too, but there are lots of opportunities for you to be interviewed, and you just never know if you can get on a local station, a national station. It takes a little bit of media training, but again, that's all practice. Okay, and then this example I just wanted to share with you guys because I thought it was fun. Dr. Erin McDonald, she's an astrophysicist, but now her job is actually writing for movies, like Hollywood movies. She consults on films, on sci-fi films, to make sure that the things that they're portraying in those films are accurate. And so this is a really cool job if you're into science and you want to maybe convey other things in traditional media, which is a huge platform, you know, through movies. This is an awesome, awesome opportunity. Okay, let me check my time here. So I'm going to talk for another 4 minutes or so, and then we're going to go into Q&A. But this last bit of my presentation, I want to share with you about amplifying your story. And I'm not going to go too much into depth about the nitty-gritty things about social media that will help. I think all of that information is available online. You just got to Google it. But what I do want to talk about is just jumpstarting your digital footprint. So if you decide that this is something that you'd want to apply to your work as a climate activist, consistency is key. How can you use the platforms that you're already on to convey different messages? I think for me personally, my favorite apps by rank would be Instagram #1, Twitter, Clubhouse, Facebook, and YouTube. Okay, so yeah, big generational difference here. I am on TikTok, but I haven't quite dove in yet. But it's such a great platform to create content because it's short form. You got, you know, again, that short attention span with folks watching 30 seconds, 15 seconds worth of content that can convey a lot of good information. But pick the platform that you like. You don't have to do it all. Pick a platform that resonates with you, that you enjoy using, and figure out how you can create your own content that will speak to people who are following you. Now you can have 10 followers on a platform, or you can have 10 million. It's still an audience and it still matters. So don't ever let this idea of being an influencer or being like, you know, having so many followers make you feel legit. That's not true at all. You never know who's watching. Okay, so with that, I want to say thank you guys. Thanks for having me today. I'm really happy about contributing this element to a conference and summit like this, because I think a lot of times it gets left by the wayside, but communications in activism is extremely important. So I hope that I was able to provide a few tidbits of information that are helpful. And I'm happy to answer any questions for the remainder time. So thank you all so much for having me today.
Okay, so I'm gonna let participants unmute. I know also Sophia Arnaud, she has about 8 questions lined up and ready for you.
Woohoo!
So
Yes.
second,
Awesome.
participants can also now unmute themselves. All right, Sophia, take it away.
We have from Amelia Odife. How does becoming a better science communicator help students stay engaged and enthusiastic? Can you please provide some practical approaches to get started?
Okay, so practical approaches to get started as a science communicator is to just start. You have to do the research and get very specific about what type of science you want to talk about. So what are you passionate about? What element of the climate movement are you most engaged with? Okay, is it looking at, you know, water systems? Is it looking at climate justice? Is it about sea level rise? I don't know. You got to figure out for yourself what the first thing is that you are really passionate about. Once you figure that out, then from there, the pathways that I just showed you through my presentation are all outlets and branches of places where you can take that passion, translate it into how can you break down that topic into smaller bite-sized pieces, and then amplify it on those pathways. So there's no one size fits all. You can figure out which of those, you know, select which pathway you like, what topic you're most passionate about, and then start creating content. There really are not too many rules other than making sure the science is correct. That's number one. So you've got to do the homework, you've got to do the research and have your sources. But if you begin there, you'll be able to get started as a science communicator. And I don't think that there's really an age limit on that. It's just a matter of understanding the science.
Okay, So this next question is from Mark Tuhulka. While in high school, you attended a student conference with Sylvia Earle and Mike Hathis. Was that a pivotal moment in deciding your career, or were you already on that path?
That's so funny you bring that up. Thank you, Mark, for submitting that. Yeah, when I was in high school, I attended this overnight conference. It was really cool. It was like a sleepover at a museum, the IGFA Museum up in Fort Lauderdale, and it was hosted by Nat Geo, and Dr. Sylvia Earle and Dr. Mike Heithaus were presenters, and they told us about their adventures in the ocean, the work that they were doing, the research. And it was incredibly inspiring. And that night was the first time that I had a chance to speak with Dr. Sylvia Earle, who I'd, heard about years before, and she was really one of the only female role models that I knew of at the time in marine conservation. And so to meet with her and chat with her really did have a huge, huge impact on my life, because like Bill Nye, I think Dr. Sylvia Earle has played a huge role in amplifying messages about protecting the ocean. She's done a great job. She has a show on Netflix. She's got a nonprofit that she operates, and is constantly working as a spokesperson. We call her deepness, because she's out there in the world being an effective messenger, an effective science communicator. So yes, thanks for that question.
What advice do you have for high school students regarding time management aspect of creating an image for yourself?
Yeah, time management is everything. So my schedule personally is pretty busy, and stacking lots of things into a little bit of time. But it just takes practice. So over the years, you'll learn how to juggle more, to handle more on your plate. But you've got to understand what your priorities are. Of course, school is very much a priority. Get that done. But what are you doing with your free time? How much time are you spending on social media just browsing, consuming? Can you use that time instead to work on your own content? And so for me, it's always seeking balance. No matter what your schedule looks like, just analyze it, assess what you've got between all of your extracurricular activities, your studies, all of that, and look at what extra time you have there and how can you maximize it. And so yeah, you got to really decide on a personal level what works for you.
From Shrisha Banerjee, are there other ways of science communication other than those you listed? Just asking out of curiosity.
Yes, no, it's a great question. For sure. I think any medium, any platform that has the capability of letting users create content, whether it's written content, video content, voice content, are all opportunities for science communication. Once you have your core story down, what's the role you want to play in the world, what's the direct specific message that you're trying to convey, you can start there. And it doesn't just have to be one thing. I mean, you can start and build on that, right? So for me, when I was in college, I started with this idea of wanting to continually engage with youth and young people, because I saw myself in them, and I wanted to do everything I could to facilitate the connections that I didn't have as a kid to the ocean, the opportunities that I didn't have as a kid. So that's where I began, and it's still an element of what I do today, but I've built on that. And so yeah, you just take your time, and there's no rush. It's just about being consistent and being clear and concise.
All right, so this next question is from Brianna Castilla. What are some tips for consistent motivation for creating content?
That's a good one. Yeah, it's time consuming. Content creation is time consuming, but to stay motivated to continue doing it goes all back to your intention. That question that I asked you in the beginning, what is your ultimate intention? If you can be clear about that and know that this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, you're going to find the motivation. Is it easy all the time? Absolutely not. There are days where I do not feel like making anything because I'm tired. And what I've learned as I've grown older is just to pay attention to those moments, especially when you feel burnt out. You have to rest, because rest is not just sleeping. Rest is giving your brain a break. It's about doing something that maybe tends to your inner child. Like, what are the things that you loved to do when you were way younger? Was it, painting? Was it just dancing in your room? Like, what are these things that help free your mind a bit so you can take a breath and know that the weight of the world is not just on your shoulders. I think that's very important for young activists to recognize, so that you don't get completely burned out, and have a support system. The people in your life, your friends, your family, your peers, who can you lean on when you feel that way? Like, reach out to them and have conversations and figure out solutions that work for you.
From Tehia Vyas, what is your favorite part of your job?
Yeah, my favorite part of my job, actually, well, pre-COVID, was traveling. I really enjoyed traveling. Full disclaimer, I mean, it's not the best thing because of my carbon footprint, having to have had to travel so much, obviously creating a lot of carbon. But because of the nature of my job as a TV host, I didn't really have much of a choice, but I do actively participate in carbon offsetting programs. And whenever I fly, I make sure to invest in that. And then I'm just doing my best, but traveling is awesome because it really opens up your mind and gives you a new perspective, because you learn about new cultures and different ways of life. And it gives me, that's what gives me the inspiration and the motivation to keep going.
So this next question is from Christina Graham. Do you ever feel anxious about putting others' perceptions when putting new and serious topics on social media and online?
Yeah, that's definitely, that's always going to be there. I think that in general, humans fear being judged and being criticized. It's just a natural thing. And of course, I think about that all the time, and I get negative comments. And honestly, the way I have to think about it is, number one, what people think about me is actually none of my business. If they don't like me, then okay, stop following me online, I guess. I don't know. I just want to be the highest expression of who I am, and serve the purpose that I believe that I'm called to serve, and do it to the best of my ability. And that's all I'm doing. So if people feel as though it doesn't work for them, or they have an opinion about it, well, so be it. That's just what it is. When it comes to bullying and that type of thing online, there's zero tolerance for me. If anyone comes at me with any type of harassment or any of that, they're blocked immediately. And that's just how I handle it. It is, the internet can be a dangerous place, that is for sure. So you've got to make sure you have your wits about you, that you're paying attention, and that you are doing the best to create content that's true and authentic to you. And also make sure to reach out to people, report people if they're doing anything crazy, and make sure you, again, have that support system in place to help you through when things, might go awry, because it does. It ultimately you will run into some stumbling blocks, and that's just a part of the game.
I have a question from Lil Diaz. How did you get a Clubhouse invite?
You guys are interested. Yes, Clubhouse has taken off. I joined, a friend of mine sent me the invite, but they're expanding and they're opening up more. So stay tuned. There's going to be lots of opportunities, I think, to join Clubhouse. And for those who don't know what Clubhouse is a live podcasting app where you can have conversations about any topic on the app itself. And it's really interesting. I think a lot of people gravitated toward it because of the fact that we've been so isolated for the last year. And I actually enjoy it because I love listening. And like I mentioned, I love podcasts, because it gives you room for your imagination to envision the things that people are talking about. And Clubhouse is a great practice ground for being a science communicator, because now all you have is your voice. How can you describe these things, these ideas, these experiences in a way that people can envision it themselves? I think that's a really fun element about Clubhouse.
Must we be 18 or over to be a part of the Big Blue Crew?
No, you do not have to be over 18 to be a part of the Big Blue Crew. You can join at any age. We do have, of course, a parental consent, but definitely sign up. We'd love to have you take part. And what it means to be in the Big Blue Crew is it's really just giving you access to different activations and different volunteer opportunities that have been coming our way. and we want to be able to send you, like the latest updates. And we work with lots of cool sustainable brands too. And so, yeah, lots of stuff coming down the pipeline there. So just head to bigblueandyou.org and click on what we do, the tab at the top, and hit Big Blue Crew, and you can sign up there.
Before the next question, I just have to remind you that the meeting will close at 2:15, so we have 5 minutes left of Q&A.
Great.
The next question's from me. How would you describe your brand image?
That's a good one. How would I describe my brand image? Well, I like to start with the kind of the titles that I gave myself. So basically I have science communicator, open mermaid. That's one of my fun elements that I like to, use to start conversations with people like mermaid. But I really love the idea of a mermaid because it feels like who I am, because I love the ocean. I'm spending so much time in the ocean, but I'm also on land. I feel like a siren, someone who's sending a message. And yeah, and just with my brand identity itself, it's all about creating access and opportunity and building community. That's like the through line of what I'm trying to do in the world. And I also know that with this topic area, there's so many times where we're having to deal with the heaviness of it all. And it's heavy. It's a big deal. This is not like the climate crisis is not a joke. But I think it's important that we find new ways to approach that storytelling so that people will not feel apathetic and overwhelmed, but will be inspired to take action. And you've got to do that sometimes using humor. You got to use, adventure, just different ways, different strategies that work for you, the way that you like to tell stories. And for me, that's how I usually operate. I love to just show the fun, show how exciting it is, but also, help inspire people to feel love for this place, for our planet, because it's not all gone. We still have so much left, so much beauty, so much wonder. This world has so much to offer us, and it's up to us to protect what's left.
I think this might be our last question, but from Seda Yeselik, how did you get opportunities to start being a science communicator?
That's a good one. The opportunity was it was through YouTube, actually. So the backstory on my first job at 21, right after, literally 3 months after I graduated from University of Miami, I entered a contest by Roxy, the surf brand. They created this contest for girls around the country to talk about what they're doing, whatever they're passionate about. It could have been art, it could have been whatever. And you submit a video. And a friend of mine, Veronique, who was a graduate student at the time at UM, she had a camera. We went out to the beach with my little cousins and filmed this video about plastic pollution. And I submitted it, and I ended up winning 10K. That same video that I posted for the contest, it was my only video on YouTube at the time. This was 2008. This guy, Rob Nelson, who I showed earlier, he was the founder of Untamed Science, and he had just started that project with Pearson, and wrote to me on YouTube and was like, hey, I think you'd be a good fit. Would you be interested in auditioning for a role as like one of our talent? And I was like, what? Of course I applied and got the job. So really, I think it's about creating opportunities for yourself, and content really helps. You never know who's gonna see it if you put it out there, and you continue to, again, be consistent with it. Opportunities could come your way as well.
One final question from Gianna Rado. Do you have any tips for starting an educational Instagram account about the environment?
We have like literally 30 seconds. Just get started. Come up with the aesthetic, the imagery that you want to show there, and post as much as you can, but you just got to get started. And having an editorial calendar really, really helps, because then you can think in advance about what you actually want to share, and takes the pressure off a little bit too of having to post organically every day. So get started, just go for it and see where it goes. I hope that was helpful, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today here. Really appreciate your time. And please stay in touch. I'm on all the platforms. Hit me up, Danni Washington. Feel free to send me a DM. I'd love to hear more about what everyone's working on. All right, guys. Take care,
Thanks,
all right?
Danni.
Have a great weekend.
Great to see you.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.